I'm going to start by saying howdy and welcome you to this workshop, which I've called Who Are You? Curating a Personal Data Narrative. And to walk through a little bit, very broadly, what we're going to do in the next 3 hours is we're going to do some introductions. I'm going to give you a little pre-test. I want to just get a sense of where we stand on some common terminology. I say test, but it's not really a test. I mean, it's not really a test. It's just I'm asking you some questions. And then we're going to talk about the general assignment for the class. And then we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we will jump into some work, jump into some studio time and start making some stuff. At the end of class, we will do a little bit of sharing of what we have come up with, and then we'll wrap it up. Sound good? Well, I'm so glad. um, uh, so this notion of who are you curating a personal data narrative, what you have on the screen is a project that I actually did last week. We were we've been doing some work on the house and our bookshelves in our living room. We have these custom bookshelves that were full of books, but also of this green pottery, and we had to take it all down. So we decided to photograph each piece by itself, and it was the first time we had ever tried to do it. We thought there were like 500 pieces, but actually there were only 211 pieces, which is a little disappointing, which only means we have to buy more. But this is actually a data set, and that's why I put it up here. This is a data set that, while slowly dynamic, it is dynamic because it keeps growing as we keep adding things. Just about every time we go into an antique store or something, we buy a new piece. So the collection grows, as does the data set. And introducing this thing today, this is the write-up that I put out there for the festival. Live data and social media have sparked the development of today's information-driven culture. Every day we do nothing but create data. We spend lots of time worrying about the data being captured by Facebook or WhatsApp or TikTok. But what about the other data that we are letting pass by? The bird that your dog barked at on his walk and every subsequent walk, the way you giggle at a silly joke now and then, or how often do you do that? The leaves that fall in your yard, you and the world around you you are a dynamic data set, and you are full of different types of dynamic data. So in this workshop, you're going to gather yourself. Maybe it's your Spotify playlist, your Twitter timeline, what you like on Instagram or Reddit, movies that you've watched or haven't watched, the books on your shelf or the cars that you have owned, the things that make you cry or smile, whatever it might be. In this class or workshop, we are going to collect it. We're going to be creative and generous, and we're going to create a unique data set that is a portrait of you. And with that data set, you're going to create a dynamic narrative of some kind. So the intended outcomes, just so we're all on the same page, you're going to discuss and analyze the data of your daily lives. And that's really what today is going to be about after we get through all this introductory stuff. You're going to create and manage a live data set of your own choosing that is unique to you. And I would say, even if everyone here was documenting Spotify playlists, it would still be unique to you. And you're going to create influential, experiential narratives utilizing the dynamically changing content found in your unique data set. Now, influential might feel like a large word, but I want you to have that goal. We don't want to create something we've already made or that somebody else has already made. I want you to create something that really feels new and really feels bold, and that could influence other people, inspire other people to make something awesome. But so that's the technical stuff about this class. That's the high level thinking that I came into it with as an educator. But But let's put that aside and get to know each other. I'm going to introduce myself. Hi, I am John, and you can call me John. I prefer that you call me John. Um, and I have been around in a couple of places. I've worked at advertising agencies of various sizes, design firms. I worked at IBM for a number of years, and now I'm a professor at Savannah College of Art and Design. Um, but that is the least interesting thing about me. I like to show this picture. This is the picture that my mother likes to show off when she tells her friends that she just knew that I had a future in music, because I was holding this ukulele. We had to point out to her many years later that I am holding that ukulele backwards. It is upside down and backwards in my hands. I look like a darn idiot. But anyway, but regardless, I did have a career in music and theater mainly. I was a performer, I was an actor. This is a publicity photo. That's me on the left, looking very young. Um, and for a production when I lived in Austin, Texas, but more likely I would have been found in the orchestra pit where I was a musical director, I was a professional piano player, and from that life I found design, and I started designing posters. I didn't know what I was doing when I started, which is why I went back to school for design. And this world of theater has really been a huge part of my design life, whether it was when I was designing the theater posters or working in nonprofits and designing for, or this information design project that has been a passion project of mine for close to, oh gosh, 15 years now, 10, 15 years, a project that I started in undergrad and brought I've continued to update and grow, and is now a little side business of mine, this musical theater history map, subway map of musical theater history. If any of you are interested in that, shoot me a note and I'll tell you more about it. But you'll also find me designing a lot of brand identities. I also have at IBM, obviously, I worked in digital product design, working from artificial intelligence and health and finance, and in the human resources sphere at the end, where I was a design principal for the talent management solutions portfolio. But now I am a professor of graphic design at the Savannah College of Art and Design in Savannah, Georgia, which is where I live. Moved here from Boston, and I was thrilled to escape the snow. Of course, I found the heat, but it's a good trade-off. I'm also a graduate coordinator here, one of a group of 3 who coordinate our very large graphic design and visual experience MA and MFA programs. And it's a wonderful place to be. So I'm going to tell you next in my little introduction about me, about this little story I like to tell that I think really sums me up. It's the story of Texas Instruments, Emma Thompson, and the Alexander Technique. So when I was a kid, my dad brought home this TI 99 4A computer. It was the coolest thing that I had ever seen. We hooked it up to a TV in the living room, and this blue screen came on. My dad was an engineer for Texas Utilities, which was like the big electric company in Texas at the time. And he had access to all this sort of stuff at work. And this computer that he brought home for us, I was probably 5 or 6 years old. It was magical, and I mean, I just thought it was the most amazing things. It could do things for us, like it could repeat lines of text that we typed in. Believe it or not, it would look a little bit something like this. It wasn't particularly groundbreaking. I'm sure some of you have used basic programming before, but anyway, it was basic. But my sister and I loved every single minute. And my dad just let us play with it. He didn't warn us that we might break it. He didn't tell us that it was hard or that children shouldn't, would be confused by computer. It was just, he left it for us as a toy, and it was a total blast. And But he eventually had to bring that computer back to work. And so it was sadly short-lived. So that's the first little snippet of the story. The second little snippet is moment number 2. In my sophomore year of high school, so this is grade 10, I decided to audition for my very first play, which was a British farce called Noise is Off. And it was British, so we all had to have accents. We all had to sound like we were British. And in preparation for the audition, I watched a movie over and over again. I watched the movie Howard's End over and over again as much as possible. And I was convinced that I sounded as sophisticated as Emma Thompson. And at the audition, I wasn't nervous or anything. I was just really excited to play. And it was probably that very first audition, I think, was probably the best performance I ever gave as an actor. I let myself fall directly into all the characters that I was asked to read. I just said the lines and I really meant them, which might seem like a really simple way to describe acting, but it works. I didn't have at the time, I didn't have any of the hang-ups that most performers gather along the way. I wasn't worried about what I looked like. I didn't care about what I sounded like or anything. I didn't care about what everybody else in the room would think, all my peers. But how could I worry about that? I wasn't me. I was one of the characters. And the characters didn't care what these students thought, right? So that's moment number 2. Moment number 3 was when I was in theater school at the University of Texas at Austin, and I was studying voice and movement. We spent a lot of time breathing. The class was based on the Alexander technique, which focuses on the release of unnecessary muscular tension, thereby correcting the distortion, imbalance, and compression that builds up over the course of our lives. And much of the release was found through the simple act of breathing, and that's the Alexander technique. Jim Hancock, our teacher, mentioned something on the first day of class that will remain with me forever. The way that humans breathe changes roughly after the age of 5. Prior to that, all of our breaths are deep and long, and our lungs expand down and out, and everything fills completely. We're just free and relaxed, and we have no inhibitions, and we don't have a care in the world. But at some point in our development, the breath we take becomes shallow. It only partially fills our lungs. We cut off huge amounts of potential air intake. Children's relaxation and freedom allows their diaphragms to relax and release and give way to all of that awesome inhalation. So that inhibition that I had with that computer is at the heart of what made my first major media experience so effortless and powerful. I wasn't worried about getting it right. I was just having fun. And at that audition in high school, I was in the moment. I was responding to what I was given, and I wasn't letting any of the tensions of life get in the way of creating. And I've always wondered, how can I revert to that childlike state of carefree wonder? And if we could all do that, maybe we could pursue a life of release and possibilities instead of tension and limitations. And this is likely why I love what I do, that I get to help others find joy and wonder in the art of making things.